Well, good morning. Thanks for joining me out here on a beautiful cloudy day in downtown Washington D.C. Tell you what, let me turn you around so that you can kind of figure out where I am. I'm standing at the corner of Pennsylvania, which sounds really familiar for all you Americans. Pennsylvania Avenue, isn't that supposed to be like famous or something? Yeah, so the White House is like 2 blocks that way. Why aren't I painting the White House? Because everybody paints the White House. And the Capitol building is behind you. Let me turn you around. There is the Capitol building covered with scaffolding, which is a little bit of the reason why I decided not to paint that this morning. I'll come back and do that another day. Instead, I've decided to shoot up this way. I don't even know what that building up there is. It looks pretty important. But this building right here is the Willard Intercontinental. And I have a bit of a relationship with this establishment. I painted here about 5 years ago inside. And you can find that video on my wedding painter website. But I'm going to shoot this way. It's a nice arrangement. The street light is particularly nice. The big challenge here this morning is, of course, the light. And this is pretty typical for plein air painting. You drive 4 or 5 hours or fly across the country, set up your easel hoping for good weather, and sometimes you don't get it. Now when I say good, obviously I mean some sunshine. On a day like today, I feel like a plein air painter has 2 choices. One is pretend the sun is shining and then use my background knowledge of what things look like in the sun. That's an option. I may go with that one, I'm not sure. Option number 2 on a cloudy day like this is, hey man, don't fight it, go with it. In fact, exaggerate it. And I might do that. One of the primary differences between those two, no matter which way I go, there are going to be some very light spots on my canvas. Does that make sense? Just because it's a cloudy day does not mean the lightest thing in my canvas is going to be, you know, number 2 or number 3 gray. No. It'll still be light. The difference is if it's sunny, it's going to be a warm light. If it's cloudy like this, I'm going to go mostly with it'll be a cool painting. Got it? Okay, now I'm going to turn you off because I've got some serious thinking to do. Okay, I think I've made up my mind. I've surprised myself. I took a couple of pictures with my phone, and when looking at the viewfinder, the thing I noticed immediately was these bright red cars, taxi cabs, yellow one in the foreground, and the tail lights. And I think that I'm going to make much of that. You see again why I like painting outside. Okay, good enough. There's some part of me every time when I do a painting that I want to stop at this point and sign it, say I'm done. I just love the drips, I love the running, I love the splashing. I want to try to retain as much of that as I can in the final painting because you just can't match. Let me zoom in here a little bit. You just can't match this kind of texture. You can't invent it, you can't make it up. Only natural processes will create that kind of texture, and it's all over the canvas. One of the things I try to do at every step of the painting process, and I recommend it for you as well, is that, you know, I use the expression if I was to get run over by a Mack truck, which is actually kind of a possibility today. This is a very busy intersection, as you no doubt hear. If I got run over, then I'd leave a beautiful painting behind me. Got it? I decided not to wait very long. It's still wet, but I'm going to start doing some drawing, and I'm using these really nice long brushes. Let me see if I can give you a name here. They are by Jewel Plein Air. It's kind of funny that they call them plein air, because I would think most people who want to do plein air painting would want little bitty things that are fit in their backpack. So go figure. But I love them. I buy them. I have dozens of them. I have dozens of brushes because they all wear out. I don't know if you know that or not. Brushes have a shelf life. By the way, for my students, I guess that's all of you, please notice that the red in the lower right corner of this painting represents these red taxis. I didn't paint taxis, I painted red in the vaguely taxi zone. You get that? Follow me in that. Don't paint little red squares. At least if you're going to paint like me, okay? Which is why you're watching this video. My way is the right way to paint. That might be a lamppost. I can move it if I don't like it. It's the edge of the building, maybe. All these lines are up for grabs. Everything here is negotiable. Just because you put a line down doesn't mean you have to go with it.
Are you noticing the way I'm using the brush handles to estimate the angles in my subject matter? And by the way, these long-handled brushes are really, really good for that. Some of you struggle with the theory of linear perspective. If you'll just get really good at this one trick, you can forget all about the theory. Get really good at seeing and replicating the angles in your subject matter, and your brush handles are a tool you have right in your fingers all the time.
Let me talk for just a second about drawing, what mistakes you can get away with and what mistakes you can't get away with. The drawing mistakes that are okay is eliminating things, moving things, shifting things. I'm not going to hang a photograph next to my painting on the wall. Does that make sense? So you can make all kinds of mistakes as long as nobody can tell they're mistakes. Now here's the kind of mistakes that you can't make, and it is perspective. Once you've established a perspective, your viewers can spot errors, mistakes. So I'm talking to myself here. I want to be very, very, very careful as I'm drawing, the whole time I'm drawing. Once I've established a vanishing point, I need to stick with it, because I can't change it, or my viewers will see his perspective's a little off. Man, I've done that hundreds of times.
There's a part of me that would really rather forego this liney drawing step of the process altogether. I'd rather just keep throwing paint around with joyful abandon. But I discovered several years ago that, in fact, when I did that, far too often I would get 80% of the way through a painting and then discover I'd made some dreadful drawing mistake that I couldn't fix. So I began interrupting my paint throwing with this rather analytical, mathematical, linear step of the process, and that has helped a great deal. When I teach an art class, at this point about half the members of the class say, "Yay, this is the part I like," and the other half of the class says, "Yuck, this is the part I don't like." And there's a part of me that really wonders if at some point in the future I may discover some better way to accomplish what I'm doing here by this drawing, but I haven't discovered what that is yet. So this is where I am in my journey. And until I discover a better way, I'm just going to have to keep on making lines. So if you're like me, draw on, comrades. Let's work this out together.
Oh yeah. That's fun. That's fun. It's not real art, but it's fun. That's so have fun. Thank you for hanging out. You come back.
You'll notice I've switched to the color red to do some of the drawing here. That adds just one more element of variety to the painting. Don't stay in one color too long. Switch it up. Have some fun. Now, I think you're already aware of this, but just let me reiterate. You realize, don't you, that all of these acrylic colors are transparent. It would be a very, very different effect if they were opaque. The ratio, I think, is usually about 5 parts medium to 1 part paint, but that varies according to the quality of paint that you use and the brand that you use. Just work it out so that when you put the paint down, it has an intensity that you like, but you can still see through it. The real issue is keep white out of it, because white, of course, is what makes your colors opaque. It's this transparent layers of acrylic that I think gives my paintings the glow that I'm really looking for. By the way, just in case you're wondering, no, I am not capturing the fabulous Second Empire architecture on this building, window for window or ledge for ledge. No, I'm just trying to give the general impression of what's going on up there, and I think when you or I look at the final painting, I think I managed to do that, but by no means is it a perfectly accurate rendering of what's happening. This is a good example of the kind of mistakes that you're allowed to make. You understand, again, I'm not going to put a photograph of the hotel up there on the wall next to my painting and ask people to give me a grade. I could care less if it's exactly what's up there. What I do care about is that it looks like the general impression of this hotel. And also, as you're probably aware, this video is sped up somewhat. Oh my goodness, I can't paint this fast. So if you want to see how fast I'm really going, set your replay at about half the speed and you'll see how fast I'm really doing it.
I just made an editorial decision. These 3 buildings over here are actually all 3 buildings in a row are set on different axes, so they have slightly different vanishing points, and I was going to try to capture that, but I've changed my mind. I've turned one of the buildings now so that it's lined up, because I think even though it's actually that way in reality, the viewers of my painting wouldn't believe it. They would think it was a mistake. Does that make sense? So that's the kind of quote-unquote mistake you can make. I've turned a whole building. It didn't cost me a penny. forgive me if you've watched many of my videos. You get tired of me talking about perhaps painting with two hands, but if this is your first or early video, you've noticed that I paint with two hands. I wasn't ambidextrous, I am now. I started forcing myself to paint with two hands at about the age of 50, so a dozen years ago now or so. And I was very not ambidextrous for several years. Finally now I literally am. If I lost my right arm, I'd paint with my left the rest of my life without too much trouble. It does speed up the painting process, but what it does mostly is my brain feels different. And I'm not an expert, but you know, they talk about left hand, right brain, and so on and so forth. So I really think it feels like there's something to that. It feels like when I use both hands, I'm painting with a bigger part of my brain. That's weird, but maybe I'm just being influenced by the pop science I've heard, but it feels different. And I strongly recommend that you give it a whirl.
And here I am just beginning to put figures, people, into my painting. The most important thing is to know what people look like. So do your figure studies just like everybody else. And then the second thing is to try not to do too much. Keep everything understated as much as possible.
Here's a quick perspective quiz. If let's just imagine, I'm 6 feet tall. I'm not quite, but if I'm 6 feet tall and there's a row of people heading off into the distance that are 6 feet tall and this sidewalk is level, where will all the heads appear? The answer is yes, exactly, right at the horizon line. But that's a good quiz. Remember, if whatever level you are, all the people your height, all your heads, if you're standing up, will all be the same height. The feet change. The feet come up from the bottom. It's a matter of perspective. Got it?
I tell people often that realism is easy. All you have to do is copy stuff. And that seems counterintuitive to most people because most people think that super realism is really, really hard. Well, super realism takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of attention to detail, and perhaps it requires some kind of skill. But the reason I say it's easy is because you don't really have to think much. You just copy. Impressionistic painting, or what I call here abstract realism, is much more difficult because you can never turn off your brain. Every single stroke matters, and every stroke is supposed to be beautiful.
I'm going to stop drawing now, give that a minute to dry, and do a couple layers of glaze over all the color. Alright, time for my first layer of white. For some reason, this is always one of the most fun parts of the painting process. one thing that always amazes me when I do this first layer of white, or anytime I do white, is how differently I look at the subject matter. And I'm now looking for light spots. It's like I put on a completely different set of lenses and see things that I hadn't noticed before. It's a lot of fun. Give it a try. By the way, I'm doing things that are light, not things that are white. Big difference. I mean, yes, things that are white too, but not just white things. Got it? So things that are lighting, no matter what color they are. For instance, right there, I did a blob. That's going to be a red tail light, but it's light because it's the brakes are applied. So I'm doing white there. Does that make sense? Yeah. Another one.
Throughout the painting process, you see me scratching the paint with brush handles periodically. This technique actually has an Italian name, sgraffito or sgraffito. Forgive my poor Italian accent. It's just one more way to add variety and texture to the canvas.
I reserve the right to turn those street lights on. I don't know at this point if they'll be on or not, but it's always an option.
While I'm applying this white paint, I want to make sure that I don't get in the mindset of a coloring book. The goal is not to stay inside the lines. In fact, as I will tell you in just a few minutes, I really want to make sure that I obscure the dark lines while I'm doing this white layer.
One of the things I tell my students continually in classes, painting especially in this layer technique, remember that you're not finishing the painting at any one layer until the last layer. Then you are finishing, but that's hours from now. The tendency is to try to make each layer walk on all fours and get it right. Don't do that. Keep it loose. Keep it loose. So you know, I don't have to render these buildings perfectly. Just slap something down. Well, here's the truth. I want you to do this. I tend to accidentally slap things in just the right place. I don't want to be dishonest, but don't get into too much detail. Okay, put a slap in the right place, but not too much detail. The painting is not finished. Many layers to go before it's done. Another thing to keep in mind, you can tell, let me zoom in here for a second. My technique, as you can see here, is very liney. The work I was doing a little while ago with those two brushes was line. And of course, I don't want this to be a drawing when I'm done, I want it to be a painting. So those lines are just guidelines, and in the later steps of the process, like right now when I'm doing white, I make sure that I eliminate many of those lines. That they were just there as guidelines. I'll diminish them as the painting proceeds.
You know, it dawns on me while I'm watching myself do this ornate and detailed part of the building, it dawns on me to mention that Elsewhere in this video, I talk about how to do trees by doing many layers, dark, light, and so forth. Well, that principle applies to anything that is highly textured or highly variegated, if you let me use that big old word. Anything that has a lot of busyness or energy in it. One of the best ways to render a subject like that is, in fact, by doing layers, dark light, which is exactly what you see me doing in this building. And again, I don't try to achieve exact finish on any one layer. It's step by step by step. And it is each of those steps that gives the finished painting its visual richness.
You guys could really help me out here. One of the things that I've discovered about myself is that I tend to take each step of the painting process just a little bit too far. You know that little question, when is a painting finished? That's a very good question. Now when you paint in layers or steps or stages, you've simply broken down that very good question into several steps. And the question now is, when is each step finished? And I, maybe like you, have a tendency to take each and every step just a little bit too far. You know the old joke, how many people does it take to do a painting? Two. One to paint, the other one to tackle him, shoot him, kill him, tie him up when he's done. And so if you guys don't mind helping me, when you think I'm taking some step, some stage too far, would you please start yelling at the screen for me? I'll have my ears on. I'll be listening for you. So right now I'm doing this white thing. It'd be real easy to just do a little bit too much of it. You know, it's too fun, so I'm doing too much. I don't think I'm done, but I want to make you aware of that issue because I want me to remember while I'm painting. Okay, now to do more white. You yell when you think I'm done. No, not yet. I'm not done yet. Yell in a minute. Painting, 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 painting.
Whoa, wait a minute, let's see that again. What's going on here? Up, down, up, what kind of motion is that? Down, up, whoa, my goodness, all the way up to the tree, and now, is he finished yet? No, now he's gonna go the other way. What in the world is going on here? So basically, that's me having a seizure. More specifically, my hand having a seizure. I give my hand permission to have a seizure without my permission if I've been painting too carefully for too long. It's based on the principle that any stroke applied with enthusiasm, vigor, confidence, you know the routine, is a good stroke. So that's what that was.
Just a little bit more, I promise. I heard a few of you yelling. And you're right, I am just about done. I'm done with this stage. Quick trick. This could become cliche, and anything that's a cliche, of course, is something you do too much of without thinking, but I couldn't resist. You'll notice over here, I did some vertical streaks. So that's going to look like wet sidewalks. And just for what it's worth, people are nuts about wet sidewalks. They don't like walking in them, but they like to see pictures of them.
I want you to pay careful attention here to the manner in which I move while I am putting this paint on the canvas. This part of the video has not been sped up, it's in real time because I want you to see the speed and the energy with which I apply the paint. In just a minute I'm going to turn around and talk about painting with enthusiasm, vigor, freedom, and so on. And I really do want you to understand that there's an incontrovertible connection between the way that you move and the kind of mark that you leave behind. I call it the history of human movement, one of the primary things that we enjoy about looking at a painting.
I can't imagine hardly anything more fun than this. Forgive the grammar. It looks like I'm having fun. It's because I am. Any stroke applied with enthusiasm, vigor, strength, joy, joie de vivre, any stroke applied in that way is a good stroke. Learn that. This is part of the reason why I like painting big. You see my emotions, you see my movements. Those movements don't come from, they come from my inside, right? They don't come from uptightness, they come from freedom and joy and excitement and enthusiasm. And it's hard to do that with little paintings. It can be done, but it's more difficult. I'm excited. I think this is going to turn out good. They don't all, by the way. Most of them do. I'm happy to say most of my paintings turn out passably well, some of them very well, as you know. Not all, and you need to know that. One of the most encouraging things I ever saw was a video by Kevin McPherson, and he was talking and he was doing a painting and he said, "Oh, I was out here yesterday and my painting just didn't go anywhere." Of course, when Kevin McPherson says his painting doesn't go anywhere, of course it might have still been fantastic, but be that as it may, he said it wasn't very good. And that was one of the most encouraging things, this 5 years ago, one of the most encouraging things I've ever seen. I know Kevin McPherson, but I want to tell you, yeah, not every painting's a home run, but this one is. It dawns on me to take just a second to talk about why does an artist use so many brushes. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these long-handled brushes, and the reason is it's related to my mantra. The essence of good painting is making interesting marks. The essence of doing good painting is making interesting marks. I have a variety of brushes simply because every brush makes a slightly different mark. The essence of good mark is variety. Next, I'm going to do another layer of dark outline, or drawing, if you will, with these brushes. I'm trying to pick out which two. By the way, I like painting with 2 hands too, because I put different brush in each hand, often a different color on each brush. You see me doing that, mixing color. Just another commercial there for, yeah, you should try doing 2-handed painting. There are a ton of trees in this scene. In fact, here, it's March 11th and the leaves are not starting to come out yet. And I think most people would think that was a disadvantage because we want to see nice, pretty springtime. And yeah, I'd love to come back and do DC in the spring when all the flowers are out. But there's a real advantage to doing buildings, architecture, before the leaves come out, because you can see the buildings. And so I very much like painting, enjoy painting. I didn't realize this until, I don't know, 3 or 4 winters ago. I found myself getting kind of dismayed when the leaves were coming out. How's that for a grinchy attitude? top 10 mistakes made in landscape painting. Number 2 is sticky trees. Sticky trees. You know, trees that are sticks. Whenever I talk about that, I then demonstrate what I think is the right way to do trees, which is exactly what you see me doing here. Now, it's a lot easier to do with 2 hands. You can do it with one, just takes twice as long. Notice also I do my tree branches in different colors. Good tip. It gives a more dimensional feel, makes some branches come forward and some go back like a real tree.
One of the challenges to painting cars, of course, is that they never stay put, especially when they're taxis. They were coming and going all day long. So what I typically do is take a picture with my phone and refer to it, especially later on when I'm doing the final details on these cars. What you're seeing at the bottom of the screen here, it's a little hard to make out, is actually the lids to my acrylic paint containers standing open. I've gone through many different styles of how to contain my acrylic paints. This is 8 little 4-ounce containers that all fit neatly into a larger container, and it's just one more way to make my outdoor painting process just a little bit more efficient, so I don't have to mix them on site. They're already mixed with the medium.
Stop there and do my last layer of white, I think, and then go to oils.
A really funny thing is happening right here. I'm drawing, with this white paint, I'm drawing a bus in the background. Unfortunately, I drew it right on top of an umbrella that I had drawn earlier in the dark paint. Here I am erasing it, or wiping it out, which is a very, very unusual act. In fact, when I teach classes, I tell people all the time, don't erase things, just use it to create new energy and create new surprises you didn't plan on earlier. People often ask, well, what do you do when you make a mistake? The answer is there's almost always something you can do to remedy every flub that you make. Remember, every time you approach the canvas, whether that's to put something new on or to take something old off, every time you approach the canvas, you are infusing this plane with more of your energy, more of your person, more of your soul, more of your intelligence is being applied to the canvas. So even if that's to change your mind or do something you hadn't expected to do, that's a good thing.
By the way, one of my antidotes to the sticky tree problem, I gave you part of the answer a little while ago, which is paint them fast, paint them with 2 hands if you can, make tree-like, branch-like motions very quickly rather than doing tongue painting. The other answer, the other solution to resolution or antidote to sticky trees is to do what I'm doing, you see me doing here, which is paint trees in layers. Dark light, dark light, dark light, back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth, with each layer trying to get a little more appearance of tree. Remember, again, the essence of good painting is making interesting marks. Every stroke, if I've got my wits about me, if I'm in my right mind, every stroke I'm focused on making nice marks. Similitude or realism or making it look like the thing is very much secondary in my painting world. I heard somebody call it abstract realism. That's a good description, I think, because the abstract brush strokes and colors themselves are paramount. The image, although very important, is secondary. That's the way I paint. I invite you to try it. Speaking of thumb painting, just real quick aside, I make it a principle not to use cadmiums or cobalts in my paints, usually. If I use them, I make a very strong mental note. The toxic heavy metal paints absorb through your skin, collect in your liver or kidney, and stay there till you die. So I want to be able to use my fingers when I paint, so I just don't use the toxic or heavy metal paints, cadmiums and cobalts. Got it?
Hey, and speaking of making interesting marks, let's rewind and see that again in slow motion. Here I am doing the fascia of this building. I make a dot, then I'll, wait a minute, then I pick up the brush, make another dot, and another dot, and this time make a gap for the lamppost. That makes sense. Why in the world did I do all that? Why didn't I just make one stroke right across the front? Well, the answer is good habits. Because my goal is not to paint the front of that building. My goal is to make interesting marks. And in fact, in the course of doing so, I have painted the front of the building with much more interest. You might say, I don't know, what is that? Maybe branches hanging in front? It doesn't really matter that much what it is. The viewer's mind, the viewer's brain will turn that into something. In the meantime, I've made what would otherwise be a pretty boring segment of the painting pretty interesting. That's how it works.
würdest du auch nicht schlecht finden.
Now, in oils, I'm using a generous amount of liquid made by Winsor Newton. It's of course an oil medium, keeps things transparent, dry fast, and thin. You can spread them. I use that quite a bit. Oh, and a comment about these brushes. I love this, far and away my favorite brush. Second favorite brush is those long handled things you see me using. I love these also because they cost like 89 cents a piece. Okay, I just picked up ultramarine blue and transparent oxide red, which is like a burnt sienna.
Now, in many of my classes, there's considerable conversation about what does glaze mean. It comes from the, I presume, Latin word for glass, glaze, glass, and it simply means absolutely transparent, clear color. No matter what color it is, it's transparent. And in this case, I'm putting on transparent gray. Imagine a piece of smoky colored glass, like your sunglasses, but you can see through it perfectly clearly. That's a glaze.
By the way, I want all of this glaze to be darker than I want, because that allows me to lift out and scratch out and so forth.
One of the really fun things about doing these oil glazes on top of the acrylics, of course, is that the acrylic is completely inert. I can't touch it. I can't mess that up. So I'm free to do whatever I want. And as you just saw me do a second ago, I changed the glaze in the sky to a bluer color. And now I'm changing this part to a browner color. Is that a word? I think it is. And it's just completely safe and fun and free, because anything I don't like, I can wipe it right off. It's sort of like making adjustments in Photoshop. You know, just adjust a dial, move a slider a little bit, and change it to whatever color you want. So I feel like I have complete control of the creative process. Let me be clear about something. I often talk about this step of the process being an oil glaze over the whole painting. It's actually glazes of several colors, and most of the time, as you see me doing right here, I'm actually doing a second color right on top of a first color, of course lifting up the previous one. So it's many colors, any color you want to get the effect that you like.
By the way, yes, no, I'm not speeding up the film. This is how fast I paint. At this stage, I'm in a hurry. I'm making money at this. I've not got all day. Paint like a man. Unless you're a woman, then paint like a man. Okay, I'll tell you one of the things I'm struggling with. I mean, processing. I don't know if it's a struggle, but I'm processing it. Every painting needs to be either mostly warm with cool areas or mostly cool with warm areas, right? While I'm on the subject, every painting needs to be mostly light, either light with dark areas or dark with light areas. Never 50-50. 50-50 is irritating. Every painting needs to be mostly smooth with some busy rough areas, or mostly busy rough with some smooth areas. Are you getting this? It's like the law of thirds or the golden mean or the whatever, 3/5. Just like the horizon. You want the horizon to be 1/3 from the top or from the bottom. Never 50-50. Got it? That's why the horizon is here. That's why this particular lamppost is here. It's off center and these buildings are here. So my verticals are not in the center. They're 1/3. But back to the first one. Every painting needs to be either mostly warm with cool areas, mostly cool with warm areas. And as I said at the beginning, this is a rainy day painting, which normally means cool, but it's not ending up cool. I'm okay with that. I think it's working well. The sky is cool, but the rest of the painting is warm. Let me use a comparison, an analogy. Some of my favorite excellent snow paintings. Snow is cold, cold, blue, 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 cold. Some of my favorite snow paintings are warm. Google it. I don't know if you can Google warm snow paintings or not. But, look at some masterful snow paintings and you'll see some of the best are warm. So this is along the same line. Rainy day, but it's warm. And I think it's working. I hope this looks like fun, because it is. It's really fun to be able to paint with this kind of abandon and not mess up the drawing at all.
Besides doing glazes, one of the things I want to do at this stage of the process is make sure that I have adequate darks on the canvas. At the end of this stage, the painting's going to be nearly as dark as it's going to get, and I want all of my 8, 9, 10 values to be in place.
Okay, so that's my glaze. The next thing I'm going to do is do some lifting with a rag and maybe some scratching with brush handles. And these cheap chip brush handles work really well for scratching. And this entire glaze will be dry in an hour. And for you oil painters, you know, that's pretty quick.
Now, some of you may be wondering, well, why did you put it on if you're just going to take it right off again? Well, good question. In spite of that slightly sarcastic tone I might have detected there. Good question. The answer is because the way it comes off leaves a different mark than would have been left if I had just painted around these areas. Secondly, it gives me a higher level of control because in the application of the glaze, I was thinking in terms of dark added. Now in wiping off, I'm thinking in terms of light added, so I think very differently. And the third reason, of course, is because variety. By using a two-step process, I end up with a wider range of textures. That's always good.
I think I'm done with that ragging out. As you can see, I've really accentuated the value zone. It's looking more like a painting. I can do a little bit in the tree. Okay, remember, don't do too much at any one step, even this one. Okay, by the way, I have paper towels here to clean up my brushes and to clean up messes and so forth. But when it comes to wiping paint off my canvas, I always have some cotton rags on hand because you don't want to use a paper towel because it leaves lint. The sun has come out in earnest here, so I've had to change my equipment a little bit. I've put an umbrella up and off to the side. I want to show you my easel really quickly, just in case some of you want to emulate it someday. I've simply mounted a flag holder on each side of my easel. this one is holding my paper towels, and this one can hold, as it is now, an umbrella. And there's another flag holder up there to hold another umbrella. I can have as many as 3. Of course, that's ridiculous, but sometimes I have 2. But you can't paint with sun shining on your canvas. You just can't do it. So I've turned my canvas a little bit so the sun's not on it, and I've put a hat on to keep the sun off my nice bald head. I'm going to bring you in and let you see some of this up close. What I'm after at this stage of the painting process is that I don't want to draw anything that doesn't need to be drawn. And there's a lot that doesn't need to be drawn, especially when it comes to very detailed, fussy drawing stuff. The more detailed something is, the more you need to abstract it. In this world, in the world of abstract realism, the temptation is, or the tendency, or the panic is, oh my goodness, look, I need to draw all those little dental molding doohickeys on the side. No, you don't. You better not. Or I need to draw all those railings, or I need to draw all those, whatever it is, branch it. The more detailed, the more specific it is, the more tiny it is, then the more you need to abstract it. Don't draw it, abstract it. I hope you can figure out what that means. I hope I can.
Do you see that last mark that I just made with the handle of the brush, where I scratched through the glaze and left a light colored line? That's a really good example of what I like about this glazing technique, because everything's a little darker than I need it to be. When I come back and scratch through it, it leaves a light line. And it's a very different kind of light line than would be achieved by, of course, applying light paint. I don't know how I'm going to paint in 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years, but at the moment I'm really enjoying this technique, because when you paint in several layers, you end up with very visually rich surface on the canvas. So until I find something better, I'm going to stick with it. I really hope that you'll give some of these techniques a try, or at least add them to the way you already paint, to see what it adds to your painting technique.
Now, don't forget, I have one more complete stage to go yet after this. So again, this is not the final stage. One more very important stage to go. Okay, at this stage of the painting process, I'm going to turn you off and paint without you for a while because you've seen me painting for several minutes doing this small, fairly tedious stuff. It's fun, but it's tedious. It's fun because I get to be thinking the whole time. But you don't need to watch me. I'll bring you in a little while when more of this is done, and then we'll move on after that to the final step, the final stage in my technique, which is going to be light, opaque details. And I'll be using opaque colors for the first time in this painting.
Now here is a close-up detail of my palette. It's a glass palette with aluminum edge around it, and my colors are arranged from the lower left up to the top, across to the right, in rainbow order, whatever order you like. And then my browns are in the upper right corner, light to dark. The next thing, my white paint was not laid out on this palette while I was doing the liquid because I don't want to get one hair of that white paint in my transparent liquid. So there was a big pile of liquid here before I put the white down. And then just one comment about this white. This is in fact alkyd oil paint. That's a fast drying oil paint because otherwise titanium white takes forever to dry. So that's a good tip. Try alkyd.
So I am done with the dark, transparent drawing phase. On to the final stage. Now, if you're a painter, if you're an artist, if you're a student, if you're trying to learn my technique, then let me tell you a couple things about this final stage. Number one, when people take my class, this is the stage, at which they typically blow it. They'll get this far and have a gorgeous painting going. Gorgeous because it's entirely made up of layers of transparent color. We had the opaque white acrylics in there, but that was not color, just white opaque. Everything else, every other color on this canvas is transparent. For that reason, many of my students, when they get to this point, this is the most beautiful painting they've ever produced. But now we're going to introduce traditional opaque oil colors, okay? And beginners can do this because they're not already ruined. It's the intermediate students that typically mess up. Because I tell you what happens when they get to this point, if this is you, when you get to this point you go, oh, whew, thank God, now I can paint the way I know how to paint. Now I can do my style of painting. And most people's style of painting is they plaster this entire canvas over with opaque oil paint. And as they drive, fly, or walk home, they have good reason to ask themselves, I wonder why we spent 14 hours, okay, 2.5, 3 hours, 4 hours. I wonder why we spent all that time doing all that underpainting when we just covered it up. Well, the point is you're not supposed to cover it up, okay? So please watch me. If I've done my painting right, which I think I have, no more than 10 to 15% of this canvas is going to have opaque paint on it. Get it? 10%. That's like of this entire canvas, maybe this much scattered all over. That much is going to have opaque paint on it. All the rest is going to be transparent, showing underneath. So I'm going to, if you do this with me, you choose your spots carefully. You choose where you're going to put those opaque highlights very, very carefully. You don't get out a big brush and start slapping it around. Now, you can do, like in the sky, you can do translucent. Okay, you understand? You're not confused. Opaque, translucent, transparent. Transparent, translucent, in between, opaque. Got it? Okay. You can do translucent over more than 10%. Like, I'll probably do a little bit of translucent in the sky, with translucent means you can still see through it, but it's got color on top. Because I want to diminish. This is beautiful. I like it. I don't want to lose it, but I want to push it back just a little bit. So I'll do some scumbling with opaque paint applied very thinly. Other than that, just here and there, opaque highlights. When I get to this point, one of the big questions is, I start at the highlight and work backwards toward the midtone, or do I start at the midtone and progress toward the highlight? And there's no easy answer to that question. Although I think today I'm going to actually start at nearly my lightest lights, which is going to be this sky. And by the way, a helpful resident here in Washington D.C. came by and told me that that's the White House right down here. Right down there, there's just a little corner of the White House showing, so I want to make sure I get a little bit of that in. So I'm going to start with the sky, very close to my lightest lights, and then back off toward the halftone. Okay, more talking. Okay, very important point. How do I decide what color to mix up? Huh? How do I decide where to put colors? The answer is my canvas is already telling me. Everything is already the color I want it. Just some of the colors aren't intense as they need to be, so I'm just going to pop them. But for instance, I'm going to mix up red to go here, blue to go here, yellow ochre to go here, grayish. You get the idea? So I don't come in and introduce wild and crazy colors that aren't already on the canvas. So it's easy. The canvas is already telling me how to paint it. So I've mixed up here a very light gray, actually, to go right in here. I want that to be a little warmer. Let me talk for just a second up close. Okay, that last stroke that I put in, let me point to it. Right here. It's a very typical example of how to paint this last layer. I don't need to paint that sky. It's already the color and the value and everything that I want. All I needed to do was clean it up along the edge. And that explains a lot of what I do in this final stage. I do just light opaque highlights along the edges of things to give them definition. Okay, I don't know if you can see this from there, but I keep mixing the colors as I work across the canvas. As I go that way, I keep mixing the colors to sort of chase the color that's already there. Does that make sense? I'm just making it lighter, brighter, so that I'm making what is traditionally now called sky holes. I like to rag on people. You know, artists call these sky holes. But what if it's not sky behind it? What if it's a building behind it? Then what is it? That's right, it's a building hole, and so on, and so on, and so forth. And oh, by the way, I'm using, at this point, in case you're learning this technique, I'm still using liquid, but only tiny, tiny little bit. Remember, liquid makes things transparent, and I don't want this to be transparent. I want it to be opaque or fairly translucent opaque. So I just use just enough liquid just to help the paint flow off the brush better. By the way, I'm using this fairly small bristle fan brush to go over my sky holes to fuzz them up a little bit.
This might be a good time for me to talk about the music that I've used in this video. Both of the performers are good friends of mine, Gintis Aberius and Eric Terlizzi, and you can see their websites here. Look them up. Please buy their music. It's gorgeous. Eric lives here in Raleigh, North Carolina with me. He's, as you can tell, a very gifted performer and arranger and composer, and everything that you hear him playing on this video is original to Eric. I've had the privilege of playing with him on several occasions over the years. The other is Gintis Aberius, and I could talk for minutes and minutes. I was going to say hours and hours. That's probably an exaggeration. About Gintis. Tragically, he passed away way too early several years ago from cancer. But please do look him up, read his story. He is truly, in the strongest sense of the word, a world-class musician from Lithuania. In fact, I'll tell you that after the Soviet collapse in 1989, the new national anthem for Lithuania was composed by Gintis. Look both of these men up. Please order their music and let them know that you heard about it on this video. Thank you.
Okay, is anybody out there yelling? Somebody, I hope somebody's yelling, wait, you're just about done with that building. You just think you have another hour and a half to go on it, but you're nearly finished. So I've spent quite a bit of time doing the detail, the architectural detail right up there. And if I'm not careful, probably you too, if you're not careful, you just continue that all the way down. You just keep doing, when in fact, I've said enough about that building that I hardly have to say anything more, and people will automatically fill in the rest of this detail in their mind, and by the way, get a whole lot more fun out of your painting if you let them finish it than if you finish it for them. So yes, I do have a little bit more to go. I've got to do some of that gray tin roof up there, but most of what I need to do is already done. Yeah.
One question a thoughtful student might have is, why is it in a painting that is characterized by broad and energetic brushstrokes are we allowed to use a palette knife that makes skinny little lines? The best answer to that might be this: that every move an artist makes leaves an indelible history of that movement. And what we really want to see in paintings is pleasant movements. That's what we're enjoying about a painting. And even though palette knife strokes are skinny, the viewer can easily tell that they were done with freedom, with aplomb, might be my favorite word for this, A-P-L-O-M-B. Even though they're thin lines, they're done spontaneously and joyfully. Therefore, they're legal. So here I am finally laying in some of these bright red colors that have been part of the vision for this painting from the very beginning. Red taxis, red flags, and a little bit of red clothing. Painting these flags is a good example of what I was talking about earlier. The more detailed something is, the more you have to come up with an abstracting process to capture the flag without drawing flags. Now I'm doing clothing and umbrellas, and I think this part of the video is particularly insightful for those of you who are learning how to paint. You don't have to use your fingers, but I do a lot of it here, and it sure does help. The main thing is you don't want to get too fussy, too detailed, too fastidious. Let the abstract shapes suggest clothing rather than trying to render any kind of clothing. So here I am back in the comfort of my own studio. I had to pack up quickly. Pretty typical for the life of a plein air painter. Things come up. I didn't have time to finish, but that's all right because it's always fun to attack a painting on a second day. You get to see it with fresh eyes. And everything here is dry. And that's largely because even though it's an oil painting, I used just enough liquid medium, got it? I use just enough fast dry medium so that it's dry. And that allows me to do a couple of very fun things. Here's the way I feel. I don't like having to do day 2 on a painting. I like to finish it all at once, I really do. But anytime I have to go to day 2, I throw myself a consolation prize. And the consolation prize is that I get to redo the last 3 steps. The last 3 stages. And the last 3 stages were a transparent glaze over everything, then dark details and light details. I don't mean I'm going to undo anything that I've done. I just mean that I get to do a glaze over the entire painting. Now, why would I want to do a glaze over the entire painting? Well, in my mostly immutable laws of painting outline that some of you may have or have seen, one of the mostly immutable laws of painting says, ain't a color made that don't look better with something else on top of it. In other words, a glaze on top of anything looks good. So everything I'm doing right now is completely 100% safe because I can take a rag like this and in about 10 seconds wipe everything that I've just done completely off the painting, right? So there's no reason to be tentative, nervous, cautious, anything like that. Just have fun with it. One of the other mostly immutable laws of painting, it's stated a couple of different ways.
One is, the shortest is darks first, lights last. Another way to express this principle is we don't like seeing dark paint on top of light paint. Let that sink in for a second. I know that sounds weird. We don't like seeing dark paint on top of light paint. Okay, is it sunk in? Okay. Some of you are going, what? Good, then you're engaging with me. That means anytime you put dark paint on your canvas, you're not done. That's just the wind-up. That's the preparation. That's the lead-in. So anytime you put dark paint down, you follow up with a little bit of white paint on it, around it, beside it, and so forth, and then all is well again. So now you understand, right? Right now, I am putting dark paint on top of light paint. Right? Right. But all that means is we're not done yet. Play around with some little bit of warmer color down here. Again, all of this is completely safe playing. There we go. I've got a couple dull yellows on my brush at the moment, and I'm liking some of what it's doing. It's a counteraction to of course, to the purple. There might have been just a little tiny bit too much purple in my painting. Perhaps now I have fixed that. I like it, I just didn't want quite as much of it, and this is the easy way to fix it. Okay, I think that I'm finished with that. So that was step one. I get to repeat last 3 steps, which is glaze over everything, dark details and light details. Now the good news is, of course, 99% of the dark details are already done. I don't have to go crazy and do hours and hours and hours of painting here. I'm nearly finished with this painting, but there's just a little bit I want to do. So dark details are coming next, but first I've got a rag. What do I want, now that I've put a glaze over everything, what do I want to come back and lift out again lighter? And it's pretty easy to see. Anything I want lighter, just give it a little hit here. I have my camera here, my phone, with the pictures that I took the other day. I've edited it down to 2. One that it has focus on the cars, and then one that is the whole scene. So it's slightly better than it was. A little bit more variety in color, a little bit richer in color. Next thing now is doing some dark details. I need to do a little bit more drawing on these cars. There's a very fine line between abstracting an object and not finishing an object. Does that make sense? A very fine line between those two. I want it to look abstracted. I do not want it to look unfinished. So that's the dark details. Now, repeating the third final step from the other day, which is light, opaque highlights, details. Got it? With opaque oil paint. One of the advantages of me finishing up here in my studio is that I can really zoom in and show you my painting process. And you know that all of these marks here are essentially acrylic underpainting with a couple of oil glazes on top of it. Right now I'm painting with opaque. Therefore I'm being very cautious and only putting little bits of opaque where it's really needed to increase similitude or make the object look just a little bit more like the object. But I don't want to get carried away because this is opaque paint and transparent colors are much more interesting than opaque ones. You're also probably noticing at this point that with my little bits of opaque color,
I tend to just hit the edges of things, just enough to give definition, not enough to obliterate or wipe out the beautiful transparent layers that are already on the canvas. So for instance, this is obviously is supposed to be a window. It kind of looks like a window, but it's a little messier than it ought to be. So I'm going to run a line right there to give the hint of the sill, I guess you would call it, beneath the window, and just a little bit there beside it. Going up to the next one, cut a little bit off the top of this dark shape to give just a little bit of regularity. See, in traditional painting, I would take this color and plaster all this in, just paint it, paint it, paint it, paint it. And that's what my students tend to do when they're not accustomed to my approach. But see, I don't have to, this is perfect. I don't have to do anything to that. And it would be foolish to cover up that beautiful transparent color with this not quite as beautiful opaque. I hope nobody out there is saying, well, I think opaque colors are just as beautiful. Then you're not understanding what I'm saying when I say visual richness. It's not a matter of opinion. It's not up for a vote. The fact is, transparent colors are much more complex. An opaque color is a one bounce color. Let me explain that. When the light hits an opaque object, the light bounces off the surface of that, because it's opaque, right off the surface and back to the eye of the viewer. Got it? On the other hand, when the light hits this transparent, it hits the surface, goes through several layers of transparent color, hits the white canvas, bounces off, goes back through several layers of transparent color, and hits your retina. So if there's 2 layers, there's at least, probably more like, let's be honest, there's 3 or 4, but let's say 3. When the light hits here, it goes through 3 layers of color. Bam, 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 hits the white and comes back the other way. Bam, bam, bam. 6 layers of color is what you're seeing here, as opposed to 1 layer of color when the light bounces off this opaque. Does that make sense? So transparent colors are more complex. They're more, my favorite word is rich. They're richer colors, therefore much more interesting to your brain, to your retina, than our opaque colors. Someone might say, well, then why don't you just use all transparent colors? And the answer is because that would be 1 degree less interesting. The fact that I use a combination of some opaque and some translucent means my paintings are more interesting because they're a combination of opacity and transparency. If my marks start beginning to look too similar to each other, I just did what you saw me do there with my thumbs, smearing them out, spreading them out a little bit so they're not redundant. I don't want them to look the same. Don't want them to look specky or dot-ish, which I can tend to get dot-ish. Do you let me make up that word? Using this technique. So I want to be careful not to fall into that trap. Here's one thing I do want to point out though, however, anytime you've done some fairly maybe careful or stiff drawing, one option open to us is to take a brush handle, a rag, as I'm doing now, and just mess it up a little bit. Of course, especially on a rainy day like this, it just is adding to the sense of moisture in the air. I still reserve the right to come back yet a 3rd time and add a bit of reflection there. Yeah. Any stroke applied with enthusiasm, vigor, freedom, speed is a good stroke. Conversely, almost every stroke applied otherwise is a bad stroke. Okay, I think I'm done. Thanks so much for watching. Hope this has been beneficial. Let me hear from you. If you have any questions or comments, send them to dannelsonart.com or my email, danielnelsonart@gmail.com. Thanks again for watching.